Okay, so hello, good evening, or good day, class. So this will be our lesson for midterm, and I just recorded our discussion because, of course, might as well, you know, for you to not be inconvenienced, um, in your synchronous classes. Okay, so you can just watch the video anytime, but make it sure that you will watch the video because I will be flashing questions. Okay, I'll be flashing questions for you to answer, and it will be part of your class standing. Okay. Anyway, in addition to that, handouts would still be distributed once we will have our classes face to face. Use the usual. You have your individual and group activity. Okay. So okay, let's start. Okay. So before we would uh start with the lecture. Okay, so we will be actually talking about the creative process. But before that, I would want you to watch a TikTok video because it is related to innovation and creativity. Okay. So hold on, let me just share my screen again. Okay, there we go.
Imagine getting rejected by Nike only to then build a brand valued at $13 billion. Let's talk about it. As a kid, Olivier Bernhard had trouble focusing at school, so his parents came up with an idea. To help him burn off some of his energy, they had him join a run club. Olivier fell in love with it, and he spent his childhood running in the mountains of Switzerland. And when he grew up, he turned that passion into a career, and he became a champion triathlete. Then, towards the end of his career, Olivier became obsessed with an idea. What if he could create a shoe that felt completely different to run in? So he started experimenting, and one day he added pieces of rubber from a garden hose to the bottom of his shoes. And when he tried them out on a run, that was the sensation he was looking for. The shoes felt springy yet cushioned. It felt like running on clouds. Olivier was hyped. So he decided to take his prototype and pitch it to his sponsor at the time, Nike. But they turned him down. They said the idea was too simple and they would have discovered it themselves if it had any potential. But instead of listening to them and giving up, Olivier took that as a challenge. So he started his own brand in 2010 with two of his running partners and they called it On, named after the feeling of running on clouds. And very early on, they got recognized for their innovation and they won awards for their cloud tech technology. But despite that, they struggled to get retailers to carry their shoes. They'd go from store to store pitching their technology, but nobody would bite. Retailers didn't want to take a risk on an unknown brand. So Olivier came up with a game-changing idea. He thought instead of telling these retailers about what made the shoes so special, why not go for a run with them so that they can experience it themselves? And that changed everything. After trying the shoes, the retailers were sold, and this strategy opened so many doors for On, and eventually, after a few years, they captured about 40% of the running shoe market in Switzerland. But what really took On to the next level was a Swiss man by the name of Roger Federer. In 2019, the On team noticed an Instagram post by the greatest tennis player of all time, Roger Federer, where he was wearing a pair of their shoes. Then Olivier and his co-founders met up with Roger to discuss how they can work together. The issue was he was one of the highest paid athletes in the world. So the On team knew there was no way they could afford to pay him. So instead, they gave him a 3% stake in their company and they brought him on board. And this move put them on the map. Then in 2021, On went public and they raised over $800 million. And in that moment, the company's founders all became some 9 figures richer. And to celebrate, they didn't go on a yacht to pop champagne, they went for a run instead with 100 people around New York City. And that's what On is about. It's about community. And speaking of community, one thing I love about On is how they host these run clubs at their stores around the world. And this is so important in this day and age where people are looking for third spaces which are are spaces that aren't work or home to go be social and meet new people. And if you as a brand can create a space that's a real life community where people can connect with each other under the umbrella of your brand, then that builds a lot of brand loyalty. And running has always been the DNA of On, and I love how they built credibility with the running community. They started a team called the On Athletics Club where they recruited some of the most promising and talented track and field athletes from around the world, and they train together with a legendary coach. And these athletes are very involved in product development with On. They even get on Zoom calls with the On team to give them feedback on how to make the shoes faster. Not only that, but these runners are breaking records in On's shoes, which brings so much credibility to their performance. And On is doing a great job at telling these athletes stories and creating content that their community wants to see. What stands out to me about their content is how they mix it up with the types of content as well as the levels of production. They make easy to produce content that looks like it was shot with a phone, and they use it to post athletic tips, collaborations with content creators, and they also make these carousels that you'd think a friend of yours posted instead of a brand. And I love that they can have content that looks like it was taken with a disposable camera. Then on the other side, they have content where they ramp up the production to 10 and make full-on movies. And a big angle they use here is inspiration. They tell their athletes' stories so beautifully, along with the obstacles they overcame before the glory of achieving their dreams. It's so emotional and powerful, and it's almost impossible not to get goosebumps while watching. And it motivates you to go after your own dreams, which is so genius because it psychologically links their brand to that feeling of motivation and drive. I've personally been going on runs every single day while working on this video. That's how good their content is. And just when you think you've seen it all from them, their creative team shows how next level they are. They make these futuristic campaigns that look straight out of a sci-fi movie. And here they're positioning themselves as technologically advanced, which is genius because in their industry, the expectation is that products and their technology stay in constant evolution and innovation. And speaking of innovation, just last month, On changed the game yet again with the launch of LightSpray, a groundbreaking robot that can build a shoe in 3 minutes by spraying it on. When I first saw this video, I honestly thought it was CGI, but it's real, and they have these robots on display at some of their stores. And this is yet another example of On showing how ambitious they are as a brand. But their ambition doesn't stop at footwear. To really become a giant like the biggest brands, On knew that they needed to expand into apparel. That's where their collaborations come in. They've partnered up with Loewe and released limited edition collections combining On's technology with Loewe's reputation in luxury fashion. And this kind of collaboration elevates On to a brand that could become known for its apparel. But their biggest statement was their partnership with Zendaya in June, and this announcement broke the internet. Not only was this a huge move because Zendaya is a massive celebrity, it's more so that she's become a modern day fashion icon, and thanks to her work with her stylist La Roche, she's become known as someone who's incredibly thoughtful and selective about who she works with in the fashion space. And this partnership has not only impacted On sales already, but it's also been huge for their brand awareness. And this is the kind of move that takes a brand from huge to a global force. And a great example of how On is a global brand is the way they expand into new cities. They don't just open a store, announce it, and call it a day. Instead, they partner up with local pillars of the community, whether it's through a collaboration line with LA-based collective Walk Good or this mural featuring the Emancipator Run crew in London. They really do an amazing job of representing the heartbeat and the essence of these cities, and this just shows how thoughtful On is about how they're growing their worldwide footprint. Speaking of footprint, we need to talk about On's revolutionary approach to sustainability. They launched a subscription program called Cyclon where you get recyclable shoes that are made from beans. And when you're ready for a new pair of shoes, you send them back your old ones for them to recycle and send you a fresh pair. This approach is called circularity, where nothing goes to waste and every material gets reused. This program also shows that On understands their customer and the fact that runners runners burn through so many pairs of running shoes. This kind of subscription program is a really smart way to increase a customer's lifetime value and loyalty with the brand. Of course, marketing aside, the true beauty of this program is what it means for the environment. The last thing I'll say is this. I know a lot of people might think that a brand prioritizing sustainability is a marketing gimmick, but when Olivier spoke about why it was important to him, he took it back to the mountains of Switzerland. And just like he got to run around the mountains as a kid, he wants his kids and every generation after them to be able to do it too. What brand do you want me to break down next?
Okay, so we're done. Hold on. Okay, so I'll be sharing the handout. Okay, so that was the case study presented to you by Olivier's On brand, a running shoe that is now at its peak. Yeah. So later on, um, try to think about how it is related to our topic today. So our topic is about the creative process. So it would be kind of easy to just Google things, when I ask you to come up with a product or service that you would wherein you would create your feasibility study or a business plan, it would be very, very easy for you to just Google it up without understanding or without thinking things through whether is it the best idea or not, right? That's the thing that lacks in most students. Like they solely rely on Google or other, whatever AIs. And then, although it would be it would be helpful, of course, when you try to Google things out and then try to find a good idea, but you should not stick in there. I mean, you should improve it, because of course, you need to have a pool of knowledge for you to come up with something creative and innovative. So we will be tackling about the four steps in the creative process. So during the phase one, developing entrepreneurial capacity. So under the knowledge accumulation, of course, you have to gather information, read widely, talk to people in the field, attend meetings, and absorb information related to your area of interest. So before you can come up with an idea, you should have, you should have a working knowledge on how to execute things or how can it work. Okay, so before you can think of, or before you could be creative, for you to generate an idea, again, you should have this knowledge or a working knowledge for you to start with. Okay, so how can you do that? Yeah, okay, Google can help. Read widely, watch videos to get ideas, talk to people, try to find the need in the market. What do they really need and how can you solve the problem? So that's it. So it's more on researching things. Per se, it's not really doing some marketing research per se, but somehow when you are pre-researching or like asking people out, asking ideas from other people, the more that you could accumulate this knowledge and then you can come up with your own. Okay, so that's it. That's under phase one. So it's like you're researching on things, but without really a thing in mind. You just try to find some useful ideas from the environment, from reading, from the people around you. Okay. The next one would be phase two, the mind incubation. Once you have this full of knowledge in you, you have read, you were inspired, you watched a video about an innovative product or service, let your subconscious work. Sometimes you have to sleep it in, or you know for example, you are thinking about a problem, and then all you have to do is just sleep, because to be honest, while you're sleeping, your subconscious mind or your subconscious part of your brain is still working. And then suddenly once you wake up, then you will have an idea. Something. Let your brain work it out. Do not force yourself to think of something. Okay? Because if you're doing that, the more that you could not think of creative ways or innovative things. Okay? Just allow it. Just immerse yourself. Allow your mind to do its thing, to do the thinking by not forcing it to think. If you get me. And sleeping is somehow helpful. Of course, if your brain is tired because you're always thinking and thinking and thinking of a solution to the problem, but you seem like it's very vague and it's not really clear enough to you, try to clear your mind. How do you clear your mind? Engage in some activities that you want to, or watch a movie, do some sports, some activities that you could relax your mind, because once your brain is not exhausted, then it would be better, or it would do its best to think on its own. Okay, you won't how do you call this one? You won't expect that suddenly you will have this eureka moment, or eureka moment, or the aha moment. And now we move on to the phase three, the idea experience. So you have to embrace the aha moment. New ideas often come when you're not actively thinking about them. So your brain is relaxed, you do your favorite activities, and then suddenly, oh yeah, this is a great solution to the problem. So that is your aha moment. That is the idea experience. The eureka, like the scientist would suddenly, like a light bulb would, or like a bulb would suddenly light in his head. That's the eureka moment, or the aha moment, or the idea experience. And the fourth phase is the evaluation and implementation. Of course, once you have this idea, you have to test and refine. So just like when you are trying to, create a draft, it's just a draft, but there will be some modifications as you go on with creating this product or this process. Okay, you will change some things, some details, because you're already evaluating them. You're trying to think of, I think can work, but maybe this would be better if you just change this or shift this to the other side or whatsoever. So you have to test them and modify them as needed. So for example, you have an idea. Uh don't just settle with that final idea. It's just a draft. As you go on with the process, you have to revise. Okay, you have to revise, you have to improve, you have to modify. So that's when most people would give up. So of course, don't give up and be persistent. If there is something that you wanted to do but you could not, um, yeah, there you are. Seek advice, ask help, but do not give up. And of course, you have to embrace the challenges, because again, an entrepreneur views problems as opportunities to learn and grow. So hold on, let me just plug my laptop for a moment. Okay, going back. So moving on to, yep, entrepreneurial imagination and creativity. So, of course, before moving forward, I would like to ask a question regarding that one, for you to answer in the Google Classroom. Hold on. Here we go. Here we go. I will not read. I will just flash it on your screen. Okay, so I think you got the first question. This is to ensure that you really watched the video until the end and you really understood the problem or the question. You really understood the topic. Okay. So now moving on to entrepreneurial imagination and creativity. So we have uh these four things. Okay. As an entrepreneur, you have to see the problem as an opportunity. That's always being repeated in our class, in our lessons, right? You should not see problems as problems. You should try to see problems as an opportunity for you to solve it. Because if you have the solution to the problem, then might as well, yeah, that's your opportunity to get rich or to produce a service or a product that is not existing in the market, right? So we have to analyze the problems from every angle. What is the problem? Who is affected? How are they affected? Okay. Next one will be creative thinking and analysis. This blend of creative thinking and analysis is what drives innovation. Successful entrepreneurs combine creative thinking with a systematic approach to problem solving. So, entrepreneurship is not only about being a creative thinker. Again, you are there to solve a problem. So you have to be creative in solving the problem. You have to come up with something that is not existing, and that's where creativity kicks in. And of course, how can it be logical? This creative thing or this thing that you have created should solve the existing problem. Okay? So it's not all about creativity. Like if you create or if you uh have a masterpiece, a painting, let's say, or a sculpture, can it solve a problem? So that's purely art. That's just purely creative thinking. But again, as an entrepreneur, you have to combine the two things, being creative and being logical, being creative and being a problem solver. Okay. Next one is the nature of creativity. Everyone is creative to some degree. Some people are naturally more creative than others. Of course, creativity can be learned and developed. So that's the thing. So you might be in the logical side, but somehow you can learn how to be creative. Negative thinking can block creativity. You should not be a negative thinker. Again, always see problems as an opportunity. Creative Creativity thrives with support, resources, and a willingness to learn from mistakes. And of course, developing your creativity, you have this lateral thinking. Think outside of the box and challenge assumptions, right? You always hear that phrase, think out of the box. That means you should not, yeah, you should be creative. You should not think about things that are ordinary. Like you should think about the extraordinaries, something like that. Okay? Don't be afraid to be wrong. That's the thing. In most people, yeah, just like me, to be honest, I'm afraid. I am afraid to commit mistakes because I don't want to be judged. Yeah, and that's the thing that I need to also change in myself. So I should not be afraid in doing something. I should not be afraid in making mistakes. Okay? So there you go. Of course, you have to challenge the norms. Why? Why not? Think of different angles. look for connections. There you go. So that's how you could create your, or you could develop your creativity. Okay. Now, moving on to the arenas of creativity, unlocking your potential. So first, idea creativity, coming up with new ideas like a new product, service, or solution to a problem. Yep, we have different kinds of creativity. First is about the ideas, coming up with new ideas, product, service, or solution to a problem. That's an idea. When you say material, something tangible, something that you could hold, like a product, ad report, or photograph. Okay, that's the material itself, something that you can touch or feel. For whereas for the idea, it's just an idea, a thought, a working knowledge, a solution. That's the difference. Okay. Next one is an organization creativity, finding new ways to organize people, projects, and work processes. Maybe you could address some bottlenecks in the processes. You could improve the systems that is being used in some businesses for you to have a seamless, for the customers to have a seamless experience. One example would be like the use of the machines in banks wherein clients can just deposit their cash using that kind of machines. So they don't have to, they don't have to go to do some over the counter transactions just to um deposit cash or coins or something like that. And yep, that is something. It's a like a process innovation, organization creativity. Things, for example, especially in some systems, bottlenecks are the problems being encountered in fulfilling the end result. So let's say, for example, you are like, let's say, for example, you have a business and part of, no, not really a business. Let's say, okay, you're managing a store and then you realize that customers are piling up on the queues. Like there are long, long, very, very long queues, and it's really a very tedious thing because they have to wait for over 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Yeah, because nobody is assisting them or something like that. So what can you do to improve the system? What can you do to improve the checkout process? Right? So you have to think of creative ways. So that's part of organization creativity. Okay, and next one is relationship creativity, developing innovative ways to work with others, like finding solutions that benefit everyone involved. Okay, now, okay, for my second question, hold on. So I guess, yeah, hold on. Here we go. That's the second question. Okay, we're done. Okay, moving on to the innovation process, a simplified guide. So what's the innovation process? Of course, the first one is to observe and analyze, look at the data, talk to people, understand their needs. Yeah, that's part of the creative process. It's the first one, right? Next one is think holistically. When you say holistically, whole, complete. So you have to use both logical and creative thinking. It's not just about the creative side. You have to use the logical side. You have to solve the problem, the existing problem, and you have to be creative in solving the problem, right? And last one, focus and simplify. Create simple, focused innovations that solve specific problems. Try to, if you think of a solution that's too complicated and it's not really that feasible to do, then just maybe just improve it. You have the idea, but maybe you can think of other ways to simplify the solution. Okay, that would be better because if you think of too complicated things, the thing is the solution might not work because the solution itself is complicated. You get what I mean? So yeah, try to simplify things. Try to break things down into smaller chunks for you to, solve it easily. Okay. All right. Moving on to the next one. We are talking about the disruptive innovation. What is disruptive innovation? Disruptive innovation are the things or the products that are being created that disrupt the existing technology. Okay, for example, before in the 90s or the early 2000s, it is really very rampant for school kids to own their own CD players. CDs, maybe your parents would have them, a collection of CDs, and maybe VHS or your lolas and lolas would have your VHS tapes. But nowadays you have your smartphones. You have your or no, sorry, from CDs, the audio players took place, or where you can download digital music, right? You don't just have to burn it in your CD. Nowadays you can just download it even to your own phones. Another disruptive innovation is that the use of Netflix, right? So before we have the VHS tapes, the CDs to watch movies, rent it at home. We have the Video City. Maybe you can ask your uncles or your mom and dad whether they experienced that before, wherein they will rent a CD in the video store and then rent it for 2 to 3 days and then return it. Nowadays, yeah, it was disrupted because nowadays you can just stream it on Netflix. You can just watch it online. Okay, so that is an example of disruptive innovation. What's the characteristics? It serves a different market. It targets customers who are not currently being served by existing companies, offers lower cost or performance. It may be less expensive and powerful than existing products. Okay, that's the thing. So key takeaways, innovation is about finding solutions to problems and creating new markets. Disruptive innovation can challenge established companies by targeting underserved markets. Let's take a look at that one, right? Uh, who would have thought that that Video City, a Philippine or a nationwide video store, would just be bankrupt, right? So that's due to the disruptive innovation. So successful innovation requires a combination of observation, analysis, and creative thinking. Now, we have also the different types of innovation. First one would be invention. Of course, you have to invent something like Thomas Edison created the light bulb, Graham Bell created the telephone, invented the telephone. Yeah, that's an invention. Extension is expanding on an existing product or service or process but applying it in a new way. So, yep, it's expanding but applying it in a new way. It's like having additional things. Okay. Duplication or replicating an existing product, service, or process, but adding a unique twist to improve it and stand out from the competition. Synthesis, combining existing ideas or elements to create something entirely new. Okay. So those are the different types of innovation. Okay. Moving on, common misconceptions about innovation. Okay. We have innovation is planned and predictable. So, no, it's not. Innovation is often unpredictable and can come from anyone, not just a dedicated R&D department. So, in most cases, the companies will really invest in research and development to come up with an innovation. But there are some cases wherein innovation was being done accidentally. One example, of course, is the invention of the Viagra pill. To be honest, it was invented for cardiac issues, heart failures or something like that, or heart problems. But then it was being, yeah, used nowadays for, yeah, dysfunction, erectile dysfunction. You know what I mean? Another innovation that was by accident was the invention of sticky notes. So before, like the one who invented the sticky notes, they really wanted to create a strong adhesive that would, a glue, a super glue or whatsoever. However, yeah, it didn't work out and the adhesive was not that strong. So they invented the sticky notes wherein, yeah, post it, sheet of paper, an adhesive that would work on sheet of paper without tearing it apart if you will be removing it or detaching it. So that's it. The, those are some of the innovations that took place accidentally. And it's not planned and predictable. Okay. Next one, technical specifications must be perfect. Thorough planning is good, but sometimes it's better to try, test, and revise an idea quickly. Okay, so yeah, there's no need for the technical things to be perfect. It would be better to, the creative side. You have to explore, trial and error, what works and what's not, right? Next one is innovation, relies on dreams and fantasies. While creativity is important, successful innovators focus on real world opportunities, not just daydreams. Like flying cars, like hello. All right. So these are just dreams and fantasies, but maybe someday. Maybe. But yeah, there was this article that I have read that in the 60s or yeah, maybe 50s, they thought that by the year 2020 or 2040, like people would be flying cars or will be driving flying cars. Yeah, getting there maybe. But yeah, maybe that's just a dream or a fantasy. So when you say innovation, it's not just suntok sa buwan. Hindi lang siya daydreaming. It should be realistic, okay? Real world opportunities. And big projects produce better innovations? No. Smaller teams often generate more creative ideas than large organizations. Why? Why? If you notice, like let's say for example, I will group your class. Let's say you are a class of 50 students, and then I grouped you into two groups, like 25 members each group, 25, 25. Do you think that all of the 25 members would work it out? Of course not. It's just the 80-20 rule. It's the 80-20 rule. What's the meaning of 80-20 rule? In marketing, 80% of your profits, okay, 80% of your sales were just being done by the 20% of your salespeople. That is part of marketing. And if I will be relating it into the entrepreneurial concept or the innovation concept, it's just that 80% of the acceptable projects or acceptable ideas were just generated or were just the thoughts or ideas of the 20% of the total um members of the group. So, it's useless. Like, maraming pabigat dyan. Maraming pabibo, marami ding pabigat, 'di ba? May mga iba na sasakay na lang kung anong mangyayari. Aasa na lang sa iba. And that is why it would be best for classroom activities to just be a maximum of 5 members or 4 members so that everyone, each of them, would be thinking or participating. The thing is just that we only have that's why I somehow just group into four, regardless of being five or more, because we have limited time. If we only have our class for like more than an hour, then let's say yeah, we can have maybe five groups or six groups in one meeting. But no, it's not possible. We only have an hour, right? So, but then again, big projects, or this is a lie. Misconception. When you say misconception, yeah, maling akala ang misconception, okay? Akala ko ganito. Akala ko kapag malaking project, mas magandang innovation, hindi po. Ay, akala ko kapag mas maraming member, mas maraming magagandang ano, kasi 'di ba sabi natin, the more the merrier, two heads are better than one. Yes, of course, but if you are a lot of people in one group, yeah, maraming pabuhat. So that's not the deal. That's not ideal. Okay? So, maling akala ang big projects produce better innovations. Mas maigi, mas maganda kung mas kokonti kayo sa isang team para talagang lahat nag-iisip. Okay? Moving on to principles of innovation. So, next one, be action-oriented. Innovators are always actively searching for new ideas, of course. Make it simple. I told you that before. Make it simpler. Do not complicate things. Make it customer focused, of course. You have to satisfy the needs of the customer. Sino bang bibili, di ba? Kailangan ikaw. So, kailangan mapasolve mo yung problem ng customer mo. That's it. You have to solve the problem of your customer. You have to identify the problem. The problem must be, what's the pain in your target market? That's what you should solve. Okay, always keep the customers in mind. This because they are the end users anyway, right? And start small. Don't try to do too much at once. Begin with smaller projects and build upon it, allowing for planned growth and expansion at the right time. Maraming iniisip na, ay, gusto ko magpatayo ng business, tapos malaking kapital ang kailangan. Hindi. Mas maganda if you started small. Because from there, if you will manage a large scale business without understanding the minute things, without understanding the small details, you didn't start small. You started large scale. So you don't know the technical know-how, right? And if it involves a lot of money, it's a large scale. Oh my God, it's a very high risk. So if I were you, again, calculated risk, unless mayaman ka, ikaw ang anak ng ni Henry C. or whatsoever, why not? Mag-large scale ka. Pero kung dukha ka or what, kung gusto mong mag-business and kung ano lang yung kaya, edi mag-start small ka, yun yung palakihin mo. Hindi yung mag-start ka ng malaki. Hindi mo naman kaya. Hindi mo naman naiintindihan yung pasikot-sikot. Malaki ka na kaagad. Sayang yung kapital, di ba? Sayang yung, baka mali-mali pa yung mga desisyon mo sa buhay, sayang yung pera. Okay, so that's it. You have to start small. Okay, kung ano ang kaya mong capital, then yun yun. Okay? So, there you go. Now, moving on. Aim high. Strive for success. Try, test, and revise. I mentioned that earlier. Learn from failures. Do not be afraid to commit mistakes. And follow a milestone schedule. Okay, so I want to um I want to post another question about my third question for today. Hold on. Well, that's my question, my third question. And you should answer it in the Google Classroom. Okay, there we go. And we're done. So again, if you have any questions, of course, yeah, comment in the stream. I'll be posting this video and yeah, answer the questions. Don't forget. It's part of your what? It's part of your class calendar. So see you around. Bye bye.